The following lecture is from my Udemy course, Complete 3D Animation Masterclass, Create Animated Shorts. If you like my teaching style and are interested in taking your skills from intermediate or beginner to advanced 3D artist, consider enrolling in my course. Link in the bio. Okay, so the rendering has finally finished, and this is what Maya looks like after it completes. You'll see it just has that final frame there with what the last shot was. So we can go ahead and close this out. And what we can do now is we can preview this. So if we go ahead and hop over to our file here, just like with our previous render, when we go into images, you're going to see this is going to be outside of a folder. You're going to want to right click, go to new, and we can just create a folder here. I'll name this robot animation, and we can click from our first frame, 01 here, to our last at 220. Just shift click there and drag and drop them to that folder. And fingers crossed, this will work. I haven't checked this out myself. Whenever you finish a long render like this, you may have some drop frames. So we'll see. Also, I did a lot of continuous renders. Like I mentioned, I did this over 3 days. Now, from here, we can actually use our previous After Effects test scene to plug this in and try this out. So let's go ahead and take a look at that process. If we come into After Effects here and we go to File, you can go to Open Recents if you've opened it recently. We'll just go ahead and go to Open Project and navigate, and you'll see it's already there, and click Open. And this will open up our previous robot project. Now, if you remember, what we did with this one is we just used a set image here for our EXR file. Now, we set this up with our extractor effects, and we got this all in place. We even did a bit of a gamma adjustment here, so that way we could brighten it up to compensate for the linear lighting setup. If you want to reload your footage, you can actually do it over here on the project bin, and you can select the asset you want to reload from. So in this case, it's going to be the test EXR we set up. We can click on this and then right-click to access this menu here. And inside of here, you'll see the option to either reload or replace footage. Reload will just refresh it if you were to have made a change to it and hasn't applied here, but replace allows us to replace it with pretty much anything else. So in this case, we're going to replace it with our image sequence file. We can come over here to File, and we can navigate to that image sequence. So we're going to navigate here to our Section 4 project, Images, and then we're going to select the Robot Animation Image Sequence folder here to bring in. Sometimes you have to click into these to access them as image sequences. And in this particular case, you'll see we need to do that. So if I come to images here, you'll see all of this is grayed out. But if I double click into the folder here and select the first frame, you'll see down here, there's this checkbox, which is Open EXR Sequence. And what that means is it's going to open it as an image sequence. So make sure that's checked. Otherwise, it's just going to replace it with the first frame, which is something we don't want. And then click Import, and this should replace our current footage with this one here. So we'll go ahead and click Import, and we should now have a video file. And you'll see that this video is a lot shorter than our timeline, so we're going to need to retime this in terms of our composition. But you can see now it has been replaced. And if I were to hit the spacebar and hit play, we'll get a first look at our animation, which may take a bit. EXRs are very heavy in terms of data. So expect it to take a long time for this to play through, especially the first time you play through it. Remember, what's happening down here is it is buffering. Okay, so I can see it is moving, so we do have animation. Let's go ahead and just get our composition set up. Then we'll hit play. That way we buffer it the whole way. I'm going to just pause here. And let's go over changing our composition to kind of match this. So the first thing we need to do is figure out when this ends. We can drag the range sliders here to get a better gauge of time. In particular, if we drag this top one here, it's going to narrow us down so we can see the time a little bit better in frames. And then we can click here to find where this is going to end and just drag to that precise frame where it ends at. So it'd be the notch right before here is going to be our final frame. We can see the exact time for that here, so we can get a good idea of it. To change our composition, we're going to come over here to our composition file. We can click on this, right-click, and go to Composition Settings to bring up the composition window. And then here we can change our various settings. So one of the things I might want to change is something like frame rate. Currently, it's at 30 frames per second, but we set this to be 24. So I'm going to make that change first. I'm just going to type in 24 here and hit OK. And you'll notice that time changes a bit down here. So you'll notice that this no longer ends at 7:09, it's ending at 7:06, or actually 7:07 here, it looks like. So you'll want to make that change beforehand if you haven't yet, making sure that frame rate matches. Something important to know is the default frame rate that After Effects always applies when you import an image sequence is going to be 30 frames per second. There is an exception with importing video files. Video files, it usually brings in the native frame rate of that video file, but with image sequences, it uses that default of 30, so it's good to switch that to 24. Now, down here in the duration, the start and end time, we can switch the end time here to the time that our last frame is currently on. And this is one of the nice things about starting with an image is if you need to do frame conversions or anything like that, you're pretty much already ready to go because you're going to have to change this anyway. So let's go ahead and start here. This last one here is going to be our milliseconds. This one's going to be our seconds. This one here is minutes, and this one is hours. So it's currently set to be 7 minutes. That's really long. We're going to set that to 0. Then I'm going to come in here to my seconds and set that to 7. And then my milliseconds, set that to 07. And then once we're done, we can come here and click OK. And now you'll see that our range slider is exact. So at this stage, I can kind of scrub through this to just make sure that there's no dropped frames. There's no really weird stuff going on. You'll see this area it's not really jumping to because it hasn't buffered, which is also concerning. Hopefully it's not stuck there. And we can just check and make sure those are looking good. So that does look pretty good so far. I'm going to hit play to buffer this, and then we'll come back and watch it in full just to see how it goes. But that's going to be how you can swap that footage in after you've already set up all your various effects with your initial composite. So just be mindful that we could have done all the non-motion related compositing we needed to do with that test image. So if you wanted to, export that image and work on it while your computer's rendering, or maybe you have a second computer you could work on, you could get all that done. And then when the render is finally complete, you can just plug it in, watch the video, and then add in necessary motion effects like motion blur, and you'll be good to go. So keep that in mind as you move forward. And just remember, if you are working with EXRs at 1920 by 1080, it is going to take a while to buffer. Okay, so this is a time-consuming process. Now, while I let this buffer, as a challenge, what I want you to do is take your own image sequence and try and plug it into your After Effects file to see if you can make it all come together. All right, so go ahead and do that as a challenge. And then when you get back, we'll see the final video here. All right, so welcome back. So let's go ahead and check this out. You can see I have a full green bar down here, which means it's buffered all the way. We can go ahead and hit play and see how this turned out. All right, awesome. So there is our animation. I don't see any major flaws here, so I don't think I have to do any re-rendering, but if you did have to go back and re-render a certain frame or certain frame range, you can use the process we discussed for going back and re-rendering in the other video. There are some areas that look a little bit strange. We have these dark areas on the sand. Those are areas that I may want to do some sort of edit on, but I don't think I will for this project. You might want to slow things down just to make sure the character doesn't clip through the ground anywhere. A lot of the times there's things that we see in the rendering that we missed before we got to the rendering. So those are things we might want to change up. But overall, I think this looks pretty good. And I would be satisfied to move forward with adding in some post-processing effects. So let's go ahead and dive into that next. Remember to save though. I haven't been good about reminding you all. So once you accomplish a task, save. And we're ready to move forward. So go ahead and get that set up, get your image sequence in here, check it out, re-render any frames you think you may need to re-render, and we're going to add some more effects to this to hopefully make it look even better.